Now we're going to move on and to review the movie Foxcatcher, which I saw earlier this week. I think it was earlier this week. It might have been a week before. In any case, it doesn't really matter. What I shall say here and now, as I did in the Preston FM review, as a word of warning, do not do any research into the Foxcatcher case. Do not do any background reading into this, because it will ruin your enjoyment of the movie. Maybe. I'll be honest with you, I hadn't had it ruined. I didn't do any background research to it. I just saw it as is. I knew it was based on true events. It was a case I'm not familiar with. Though I would say, as a word of warning, do not do any research to it. Do research and background reading on it later on, by all means, but just don't do that before it, because it will take the bite out of it a certain way. Now, I did thoroughly enjoy this movie. Much like Birdman, this was an incredibly amazing movie to watch, even though I saw it in a less than fantastic cinema, but we'll move on. The movie itself is very cold, very laconic, and very quiet and dry, which, once again, my enjoyment was ruined of it because I was in such a terrible cinema, one which had sound bleeding through, so in the quieter, more subdued moments I was hearing noises which sound like the Titanic turning over. But in any case, I did love this movie, though it is a movie which is very much driven by the performances than necessarily the narrative. Now, this is a movie which isn't about wrestling quite the same way that a few years ago when you had The Fighter, you had people saying, it's like Rocky but harder. This isn't a sports movie, let's be honest. This movie isn't a sports movie. And we'll talk about the nature of saying about what the movie is about shortly, but the movie itself is very much, like I say, led on performances. It's a very performance-led piece and necessarily a narrative one. And the performances by Steve Carell and Channing Tatum and Mark Ruffalo are fantastic. There is something metamorphic about all of them. They are certainly career-defining performances. To the degree that Steve Carell, as you're watching this, you kind of forget that it's him. He performs it in such a way which is so detached, so odd, so very different to anything we've ever seen him do, that it's hard to believe that this guy playing this character is wacky Steve Carell, the guy that we've seen from The Office or Anchorman, that he's playing such a fairly dark and, to a certain degree, twisted character, but one that is so fascinating. Channing Tatum. This is a movie that proves that he can act more than anything else. It is truly amazing to see someone who you would otherwise probably cast off as being a pretty boy, as being an action hero, producing a performance of this caliber. It is amazing. And of course, Mark Ruffalo once again wows us and proves he is such a fantastic lead, a fantastic guy. He is great in this movie and wonderful. I cannot fault the performances in this movie whatsoever, because they are so utterly wonderful. You haven't seen the like of them from any of these people in this movie, and you may never will do. Whether or not Steve Carell, this is going to be the turning point in his career and he's going to stop doing these trite, fairly dumb and silly family movies or not, we'll soon see. But this does prove that he, much like Channing Tatum, can do serious. That there is no artifice to it, there is no irony to it, there is no punchline to me saying this. They are great and fantastic. Mark Ruffalo, I can't say anything more about his performance because it is so good. Now, I have to say, though, as a way of criticism for this movie, is that it does set itself up as being more focused on Channing Tatum's character than necessarily Steve Carell's character or Mark Ruffalo's character. And as the movie goes on, that focus starts to broaden out. And there are moments towards the end of the film that Channing Tatum's character has just seemingly just vanished. There are reasons of it, of course, within the story itself, though it does feel rather jarring to a degree that this felt like a character that a movie would be a movie about Mark Schultz, and then he disappears, and then it becomes more focused about the fractious relationship between Jean Dupont and Dave Schultz. I think it was David Schultz, the other one. And whilst there isn't a major issue why it isn't something that had me going, oh, well, the movie's lost me, it was one of those things that was making it a little bit harder to properly get my head around, though of course I can understand it. It is, to a certain degree, it does feel somewhat resembling the Fundance effect, which is the distancing technique, which is a technique used in theatre to stop you getting so engrossed in what you're seeing, which may seem like an odd concept, but like Mick's saying, the idea is that you don't become so engrossed in, say, the relationships or the performance that you forget what this movie is about. You forget the messages and the ideas before it, what it's about. Like, if you were to see a movie which was about, I don't know, homelessness, you would have the distancing technique, you would have the thumb-dunch effect in it to stop you from forgetting that this movie is about homelessness and that this movie, in your mind, is about the performances, when it isn't. It would be about homelessness and the ideas and the context around that, rather than A-list celebrity giving career-defining performance. And this movie is about things. It's about a wide variety of different topics. I'm not necessarily going to go into them purely simply because there has been a controversy that has unearthed itself in regards to this movie. And you may be familiar with this, you may not be, which is that the real Mark Schultz has taken offence to this movie, in particular due to certain readings of it, which have been put forward by certain American film critics, suggesting that there are homoerotic undertones to this movie, that to the relationship between Jean de Pomp and Mark Schultz. There was a homoerotic tension between the two of them, and this is something that Schultz adamantly denies. Not that it would honestly make much difference, but he honestly denies. And the reason why I don't want to say that this movie is about this, that, and the other is because art, by its nature, one of the great things about art is that it can be read in any number of different ways. You can see the relationship between Jean de Pomp and Mark Schultz as being homoerotic, or you can see it as being one which is about mentors. You can see it one being about brothers. You can see this movie being about matriarchal relationships between Jean de Pomp and his mother. You can see it about being patriarchal relationship between Jean de Pomp and Mark Schultz. You can see it about the relationship between brothers and the lack of any kind of siblings that there are. This is a movie about the competitive nature of sport, but these are all the things that I myself have gotten from it. You yourself watching it may find something totally different. And it's one of those things that you want to a certain degree, sit the real Mark Schultz down and say, this is just what they read from it. That's not to say what this movie is about, but that is what they themselves got from it. There is no definitive answer in art. There is no trueness. There is no absolution. There is no way you can say that this movie is about one particular thing. It's about many different things. Like I said, about relationships that are matriarchal, patriarchal, relationships between brothers and mentors, the nature of sport, nationalism, all these many different things that are in the mix that yourself may find all those things, you may find none of those things, but it's for you, the audience member, to take from it. And it is your duty at the end of the day. It's not mine to watch this movie and to get from it what you will. These are just my findings. You may watch this movie and get one thing from it. You may get nothing from it. You may hate this movie. You may love this movie. You may love it but not find any deeper meaning to it. You may just see it as being just this grim case. Or you may see it on a more spiritual or intellectual level. That is for you to do, because at the end of the day, the enjoyment of movies, whether they're good or bad, isn't truly dictated by film critics like myself. It doesn't matter what I think about it. It's about what you think about it. You may be someone who loves Michael Bay movies. You may be someone that hates them. You may be someone who likes Wes Anderson movies. You may be someone who hates them. So long as you yourself can see them, you yourself can watch them, and you yourself can get something from them, that is your business and that is your duty. It's for you to sit with your friends in the pub or at a coffee house to determine the greater physiological meanings of this stuff. It's not my duty to do so, because that is the joy of art. It's for you to be the meaning maker. It's for you, the audience maker, to walk away from this and to feel inspired by what you're seeing. And that truly, at the end of the day, is the wonderful thing about art. Regardless of what it is, whether it is a Michael Bay movie, what you get from it on a thematic level is for you to determine. Not for me, not for Mark Kermode or whoever, whatever film critic you want to name. It's about you at the end of the day and what you get from it.